Imagine it is late February 2026, peak season in Dubai. The observation deck of the Burj Khalifa is running at full capacity, the way it always does that time of year, 750 meters above a city that looks, from that height, like it was designed by someone who had never heard the word impossible. The Persian Gulf shimmers to one side, the desert bleeds into the horizon on the other, and somewhere below, $41,000 worth of penthouse apartments are sitting on the Palm Jumeirah with their lights on and nobody home. That is not a metaphor. That is inventory data. Dubai sold a dream, not a modest one, not a careful one. The dream was essentially this: move here, pay no income tax, earn more than you ever would back home, live inside a skyline that makes Manhattan look restrained. I can do it in a place so efficiently governed, so obsessively maintained, so aggressively committed to the performance of stability that you would never have to worry about the things people worry about in other cities. Not crime, not decay, not geopolitical chaos. Dubai sold certainty. That was the product. A kind of Swiss banking system, but for your entire life. And for a long time, the math worked. By 2025, an estimated 9,800 millionaires had moved to Dubai in a single year, bringing $63 billion in wealth, more than any other city on earth, according to Henley and Partners. Dubai's luxury real estate market had grown for 5 consecutive years, with 500 properties selling for more than $10 million in 2024 alone, up from just 30 in 2020. The Golden Visa program was pulling in tech founders, family offices, hedge fund managers, and the kind of globally mobile professionals who treat countries the way most people treat neighborhoods. You stay as long as the value proposition holds. This video is about what happened to that value proposition, not just in the last 3 weeks of February and March 2026, when Iranian drones and missiles started appearing in the skies above the Palm Jumeirah, but in the years before that. Because the dream did not break in a single night, and understanding why nobody is moving to Dubai the way they used to means understanding something that began long before the first air raid siren sounded over the Dubai International Financial Center. Dubai's pitch to the world was constructed with real precision. While the city sits at the exact center of a 24-hour flight radius that covers 80% of the world's population, Dubai International Airport handles over 95 million passengers annually, making it not just a destination but the literal hinge point of global air travel, the place where everyone connects on the way to somewhere else. The Emirate built free zones that let foreign companies own 100% of their operations without a local partner, a radical departure from the regional norm. It introduced long-term residency visas at a time when most Gulf states were still treating foreigners as purely temporary labor. It built, in the span of about 4 decades, a city that simply did not exist before. The promise was clear and it was consistent. 0 personal income tax, 0 capital gains tax, to 0 inheritance tax. For a senior executive earning $500,000 a year, the comparison was almost absurd. That same salary in London, after income tax and national insurance, leaves roughly $275,000. In New York, after federal, state, and city taxes, approximately $300,000. In Dubai, the full $500,000 remains intact. That arithmetic pulled people across continents. It was not complicated. It did not require ideology. It was just math. But here is the piece that started to quietly unravel first, and it unraveled while the Dubai Tourism Board was still posting record visitor numbers, and every developer from Emaar to Damac was launching new towers at off-plan events in London and Geneva and Mumbai. The cost of living was rising, fast, and the salaries were not. Let us be precise about this because the numbers matter enormously. According to Mercer's Cost of Living City ranking released in June of 2025, Dubai ranks 15th globally and is the most expensive city in the Middle East for international employees, a rise of 3 places from the previous year. 3 years before that, it ranked 18th. 3 years before that, 90th. The United Arab Emirates went from being the 90th most expensive destination for expatriates in 2013 to the 31st in 2023. That is not a gradual drift. That is a vertical trajectory. The housing numbers are the sharpest edge of this story. Rent for a 1-bedroom apartment in a central Dubai location now averages 8,700 dirhams per month, which translates to approximately $2,369, or roughly $28,000 per year just for a single bedroom flat. In the 12 months leading up to December 2024, rents rose an average of 16% across the emirate, according to CBRE's head of Middle East and North Africa research, Matthew Green. The year before that, they rose 18%, and the year before that, another 18%. Luxury residential properties in premium areas like Palm Jumeirah, downtown Dubai, and Dubai Marina command between $41,000 and $82,000 annually for a two-bedroom apartment. Now hold that number against what was happening to salaries. Cooper Fitch, one of the leading recruitment agencies in the Gulf region, had surveyed over 1,000 organizations and found that salaries across the United Arab Emirates were projected to see an average increase of 0% in 2025. Zero. Not adjusted for inflation. Not adjusted for the 16% rise in rents. Zero. Almost a third of companies surveyed by Cooper Fitch actually reduced salaries offered to new recruits. Halion, another major recruitment firm, found in its 2025 Gulf Cooperation Council market report that while 40% of professionals in the United Arab Emirates received a salary increase, the increases ranged only from 5 to 10%. Halion's chief executive, Stuart Fry, put it plainly when he said those increments were often not enough to keep up with the rising cost of living, particularly in housing and education. The education number is the one that breaks families. International schools in Dubai charge between $12,764 and $64,000 per year per child, with elite institutions exceeding $100,000 annually per student, when registration fees, uniforms, transportation, and extracurricular activities are included. For families with multiple children, education costs alone can reach between $100,000 and $150,000 a year. That single line item destroys the tax savings calculation for most professional families. Before you have spent a dirham on rent, on food, on transport, on health insurance, the school fees for two children can already equal what you would have paid in taxes back in a high-tax Western country. The math that brought you to Dubai stops working. And at that point, the question is not whether to leave. The question is when. Now let us talk about what happened in late February 2026, because you cannot analyze honestly what is happening to Dubai in March 2026 without confronting it directly. On February 28th, after the United States and Israel launched strikes against Iran that killed Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, Iran began responding with waves of ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and drones directed at Gulf states. As of March 17th, Iran had fired 314 ballistic missiles, 15 cruise missiles, and 1,672 unmanned aerial vehicles at the United Arab Emirates alone, making the UAE the single most targeted country in the region. What those projectiles hit matters, because the targeting was not random and it was not subtle. An Iranian Shahed-type drone struck near the Fairmont the Palm Hotel on Dubai's Palm Jumeirah, causing a large explosion and fire. Debris from a downed drone set fire to the Burj Al Arab Hotel. Dubai International Airport was struck in a suspected airstrike in the early morning hours, with 4 staff injured and an evacuation ordered. A fire also broke out at Jebel Ali Port, the largest port in the Middle East and the logistical spine of Dubai's entire economy. Hotel bookings in Dubai plummeted more than 60% from the moment the attacks began. More than 3,000 daily flights were disrupted, with 80% canceled at the peak of the crisis. Dale Buckner, chief executive of security firm Global Guardian and a former United States Army Special Forces commander, stated that by Tuesday morning of the first week of strikes, his firm had 7 corporate clients, including large finance and consulting firms, looking to evacuate between 1,000 and 3,000 employees each. Buckner's assessment was unsparing. He said that the city cannot function if everyone with a foreign passport flees, and that Dubai is more exposed to the risks of an expat exodus than any comparable city on Earth, precisely because 92% of its population holds a foreign passport. The Iran war did not create Dubai's vulnerability. It exposed it. Those are different things, and the distinction is where the real analysis lives. The impact of what is happening in Dubai in the spring of 2026 is not uniform across the city's population. It never is. and being honest about the stratification is what separates analysis from narrative. At the top, for those who hold $20 or $30 million in a family office registered in the Dubai International Financial Center, the calculation is uncomfortable but manageable. Hasnain Malik, who leads emerging markets equity and geopolitics strategy at Dubai-based Telemer, noted that hedge funds and family offices are mainly drawn to Dubai's tax, regulatory, and stable banking regimes. Those regimes are still intact. The banks are still open. The corporate structures are still valid. Charter jets left Dubai in the first days of the strikes, but charter jets can also return. For the ultra-wealthy, this is painful noise. It is not an existential question. For the professional middle class, the 35-year-old marketing director earning $300,000 a year, the lawyer on a 4-year contract, the finance professional who moved here with a spouse and 2 school-aged children, the story is entirely different. That person was already being squeezed before a single missile was fired. Rent renewals were coming in at 15 and 20% above the previous year. School fees were consuming the tax advantage that justified the entire relocation. Approximately 60% of Dubai's population earns less than 15,000 dirhams per month, which is roughly $4,100. For that majority, the city had already stopped delivering on its core promise long before the air raid sirens, when the geopolitical shock was simply the thing that made leaving feel urgent rather than merely sensible. And then there is the third layer, the one that almost never appears in the coverage. The Pakistani driver killed on March 7th when missile debris hit a civilian car. The Pakistani, Nepalese, and Bangladeshi workers who represent 4 of the 8 civilians killed in the strikes as of mid-March. Civilians in Gulf states are at grave risk from ongoing Iranian strikes, with attacks hitting densely populated civilian areas, including popular tourist sites. The construction workers building the luxury towers that the global elite were moving into. The hotel staff who worked at the Fairmont The Palm the night a drone hit the forecourt. These workers have no golden visa, no family office, no charter jet option. They have a phone with a money transfer app they use to send dirhams back to families in Lahore or Kathmandu or Dhaka. They are the reason Dubai's infrastructure exists. And they are, by every metric, the most exposed, the most vulnerable, and the least discussed. But here is what the coverage misses most consistently, and this is the part that those who study cities and economies for a living will recognize immediately. The geopolitical shock is the dramatic moment. It is not the structural story. The structural story was building quietly for years inside Dubai's own data, and it was being flagged by people inside the establishment itself, not by external critics. Since the late 2010s, an influx of high-net-worth individuals significantly increased the cost of living, especially housing and private school fees. As a result, thousands of middle-class workers left the country. That was happening before the pandemic, before the post-pandemic boom, before any missiles. The Emirati lawyer Habib al-Mulla, one of the most prominent legal figures in the United Arab Emirates, told the Arabian Gulf Business Insight publication that school fees and landlords' ability to charge outsized rent increases were prompting expats to leave Dubai. And he described the fees as, in his exact words, ridiculously high. Al-Mulla did not stop there. He said it is very difficult to bring them back again, and he framed the issue with unusual directness for someone inside the establishment, arguing that it is not enough to say you are attracting millionaires, that is one class, but that Dubai also needs to maintain the middle class. In September 2025, UBS estimated that Dubai had the 5th highest real estate bubble risk of 21 major cities analyzed globally, ranking behind Zurich and Los Angeles. This was not an outlier assessment. Fitch Ratings issued a forecast in spring 2025, predicting a correction of up to 15% in Dubai's real estate market in late 2025 and into 2026, citing mounting macroeconomic pressures, over-reliance on external demand, and market oversupply. Fitch's Anton Lopatin was specific. This growth was largely driven by speculative demand and short-term capital influx, and it was not sustainable. The structural vulnerability of Dubai's real estate market runs deeper than price. With approximately 41,000 new residential units expected in 2025 and 42,000 more in 2026, Cited an 80% increase from 2024's delivery of 27,000 units. The development pipeline has become a liability at exactly the moment demand is contracting. Around 66% of upcoming inventory consists of studios and one-bedroom apartments, concentrated in districts like Jumeirah Village Circle, Business Bay, Dubai South, and Mohammed bin Rashid City. These are not units designed for families putting down roots. They are units designed for investors holding short-term positions. And Fitch identified Dubai's heavy reliance on foreign capital as a core structural vulnerability, noting that sanctions, currency volatility, and political instability in source countries could disrupt investment inflows at any time. The product was always, at some level, built on a single assumption that the geopolitical weather would stay calm, that the Gulf would remain the exception to the regional rule, that the controlled, orderly, brilliantly marketed surface of Dubai would never crack. Dubai has always sold more than luxury. It has sold certainty. It is a city of glass towers and man-made islands, built on a promise. Even in a volatile region, it remains controlled, stable, and safe. When that promise is tested, the entire value proposition is tested simultaneously, because the tax advantage is permanent. But the peace of mind was always rented. Hasnain Malik, managing director for emerging and frontier markets equity strategy at Telemer, offered what may be the single most precise articulation of the long-term risk, stating that so many factors are in Dubai's favor, but that deteriorating affordability is a risk for medium-term population growth. He said that before the war added another variable to an equation that was already becoming unfavorable for a specific and critical demographic: the globally mobile professional who had choices. So where does this leave Dubai in March 2026, and what does an honest, forward-looking analysis actually say? It says several things at once, and they are not all catastrophic, even though some of them are serious. Dubai has recovered from shocks before. The 2008 financial crisis caused a property crash of historic proportions, and the city rebuilt. Between 2014 and 2019, Dubai's property prices saw a gradual decline of 25 to 30%, especially in the mid-range market, largely due to oversupply. The market recovered. The pandemic wiped out tourism in 2020. By 2022, visitor numbers were at record levels. That resilience is real and documented, and would be intellectually dishonest to dismiss. But recovering operational capacity and recovering reputation are two entirely different projects with two entirely different timelines. Flights can resume in days. The Fairmont can reopen in weeks. Repopulating the offices of the Dubai International Financial Center takes months. Rebuilding the conviction of a family that has already decided to leave, already enrolled the children in schools in Lisbon or Singapore or Toronto, takes years, if it happens at all. And what Dubai is contending with now is not a single shock, but a compound fracture. The affordability crisis that was already eroding its middle-class base, landing on top of a geopolitical event that shattered the one thing no amount of marketing can rebuild quickly, which is the intuitive sense of physical safety. The structural changes that would genuinely address the underlying vulnerabilities are known and are not secret. Rent controls or stabilization mechanisms that protect the middle-class expat base from speculative landlord behavior. A recalibration of the real estate pipeline toward genuine residential demand rather than speculative investor product. A wage environment that keeps pace with the cost of living, which requires a different relationship between employers and employees than currently exists under the Kafala labor framework. These are not politically easy changes. They involve reducing the return on investment for some of the most powerful actors in the Dubai economy. Whether they happen is a genuinely open question. What is not an open question is whether the old calculation still works the way it did in 2020 or 2021 or 2022, when the world was emerging from a pandemic and Dubai was the one city on earth that seemed to have stayed open and stayed functional. That moment was real. That window has narrowed considerably. If you have lived in Dubai or were seriously considering a move there, the question of whether this changes the math for you is the most honest question this video can end on, because the answer is genuinely different depending on where you sit in that stratification. For some of you, it changes nothing fundamental. For others, it accelerates a decision that was already forming. And for the largest group, the professionals and families and ambitious middle-class workers who make up the vast majority of Dubai's resident population, it is not a question about missiles at all. It was always about whether the arithmetic still added up. And for a growing number of people, the calculation was already going negative before the first drone ever flew over the Palm Jumeirah. If this kind of deep, data-grounded analysis of what is actually happening in the world's most watched cities is what you come here for, you already know what to do.